Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, wherever you are around the world, thanks for joining us here at the Paramount Theatre for The Curtain Call. It's our 30-minute show as we head round the world of MTG. We have a new Magic the Gathering World Champion, and his name is Brian Brown-Duin. Matej Big Z Zadelkai, how amazing was that final?
Yeah, it was great. 4 great games in that match. It was just exciting to watch. And that third game, 1 hour long, it was crazy.
And the thing is, it wasn't decided by mistakes, it was decided by amazing play, going back and forth. It looked like at one point you thought, yep, Marcio's got this and we can settle in and we're heading for the next game, and then no, back comes BBD. We've got tragic arrogance, we've got boards everywhere, we've got dice everywhere. That third game was possibly the most astonishing hour of Magic I've had the privilege to witness live. Incredible.
Yeah, it wasn't boring. We were back in the players' lounge with some of the pros, and they're like, oh, BBD's winning. No, Marcio's winning. No, BBD's winning. And it just kept on going for an hour. It was crazy.
Yeah, the DVD commentary on that match from the players' lounge would be pretty extraordinary, I can tell you. They were on the edge of their seats. It takes quite a lot to do that to a room full of pros. Absolutely amazing stuff. Now, we must also say hats off to the rest of our Final Four. Oliver 2, Shota Yasuoka, and of course Marcio Carvalho, our finalists here at Worlds 2016.
I mean, it was a great top 4. A lot of the underdogs from the pre-tournament prediction made it into that top 4. You know, Oliver 2, 18 years old, Rookie of the Year, and straight into 3rd place at Worlds. Just incredible accomplishment for him. Also, Marcio Carvalho, finally his marquee result to mark his page in his Magic story with a finals appearance. And also Shota Yasuoka proving once again that his Hall of Fame inclusion was worthy.
Absolutely. Now, we've got so much great stuff coming your way in this show. We're going to talk Jund Delirium with Joel Larson, if Standard is your thing. We're going to do a special feature on the Japanese decks in Modern, because they came with 4 of the best and sharpest decks in the room. We'll talk about that. We'll be joined by Gabby. We'll be joined by Ian. Marshall and Luis will be sitting with the limited master JC Tao to talk through some of his draft and give you some limited tips. But before all that, and before our winner interview with Brian Brown-Duin, we're going to head across to the Deck Tech studio, where BDM is with a very special guest who has a very special announcement. Take it away.
Thanks, Rich. I'm here with Luis Scott-Vargas, Pro Tour Hall of Famer. Luis, you were one of 3 players to finish with a 9-5 record in this tournament. A good enough record to make the top 4, but you missed out on tiebreakers. We call that like a virtual top 4.
Yeah, we could call it that. or we can say that I top 8'd my last 4 big tournaments, but top 8 out of 24, maybe not the same ring.
Yeah, right. Coming off of a stretch of 3 straight Pro Tour top 8s. How did this event go for you? It started out a little rocky.
Yeah, I drafted what I thought was a great deck, started 0-2, beat Joel Larson in a very close match, and then lost to Oliver 2 in the first round of Standard, so I was sitting there at 1-3. Wasn't feeling great about it, clawed back to 4-3, 2-1 my second draft. You know, I was at 6-4. I was pretty sure I needed a 4-0 in the Modern rounds. Lost to Thiago Saporito in my first round, won my last 3, but going into the last round, I actually knew that even if I won my round, I wasn't gonna make top 4 with 5 losses. Just my tiebreakers just weren't there.
It was a pretty spectacular last round of the season, though.
Yeah, my last game in particular against Steve Rubin was one of the favorite games I played, not only in the tournament, just this year. It was an awesome game.
You end the game on 1 life.
I thought seized from 3-1, having to hit an enchantment in his hand to make my Tarmogoyf big enough to chump block his Reality Smasher. Then he played Drowner, but I sequenced a string of like Tarmogoyf, Path, Grimflare, hitting Lingering Souls, and was able to claw back into it.
Yeah, it was pretty spectacular to watch. And now, as we're heading into a new Pro Tour season, heading to Hawaii, you have a pretty big announcement about your status for next year.
I do. Pro Tour Hawaii, Pro Tour Kaladesh, the first Pro Tour I'm not going to play at in the last 9 years. So I'm going to be joining the coverage team. So I'm a full-time member of coverage. I'll be covering all the Pro Tours, the World Magic Cup and Worlds, as well as a bunch of Grand Prix.
This is awesome. So what made you decide that this is something you wanted to do with your career at this stage?
It was a lot of different things. Part of it is I have now a 2-month-old child, and leaving to test for a week or 2 weeks is a lot more difficult. I love doing coverage. Honestly, the biggest reason is that I love doing coverage. I really do enjoy being in the booth and talking about Magic and working with awesome people and BDM. But I'm really looking forward to it. It's not forever. I'm actually deferring Platinum for a year because I did earn Platinum for next year. And, this is not my last match of professional Magic by any stretch. And I'm not even going to play that much less Magic next year. I'm still going to stream. I'm still going to do draft videos. I might still play in some Grand Prix. You know, there's a GP Denver. So it's more that it's just a new challenge. I wanted to focus on that. And I think that coverage is just such an awesome thing to do that I'm really looking forward to being part of the team.
Well, you know, you were describing to me before we went on the air, we were talking about that 1 hour game.
Right.
In the finals of this Magic World Championship, and you said it didn't seem like an hour.
At the end of that game, at the end of Game 3 with BBD against Marcio, we were told it was an hour and 7-minute game. If you had told me it was a 25-minute game, I would have believed you. I was just so dialed in, and that's what I love. And being able to talk about these players playing is really incredible. So obviously, you know, my last game against Steve was such a good game, and it was a little bittersweet. I'm like, wow, I'm really not going to be doing this for a while. But honestly, it's not the end of it. And also, you know, being on the other side of it, like I really do enjoy coverage, and I really enjoy trying to see what it has to offer and what I have to offer it. You know, I think that I do bring some amount to the booth.
You absolutely do. I mean, just if you listen to that finals match, you get a sense of what's in store next year on Pro Tour coverage with Luis Scott-Vargas part of the team. It's going to start at Pro Tour Kaladesh in just a couple weeks. Do you feel like you're leaving Team Channel Fireball in a decent spot here?
I do. I still am going to remain in contact with all those guys. Part of my job as, you know, a color commentator is to be up on all the formats. So I actually still think I'm going to do a lot of what I would normally do to prepare for a Pro Tour, which is play games of the format with the guys who are testing for the Pro Tour, because I want to be as up on the format as I can. My goal is to not, you know, show up and not know what all the good decks are and not know how to draft. I still have a lot I need to learn and keep up on. So it's not me stepping back.
We need you to unlearn a little about draft for coverage drafts. But in the meantime, it'll be great to have you on the team in Hawaii and moving forward throughout the next season. In the meantime, we're sending it back to Rich at the desk.
Very much, BDN. Thanks very much to LSV. We can't wait to have him on board as part of the coverage family through the rest of this 2016-17 season. I've been joined by Ian Duke and Gabby Spots here at the desk. Gabby, is this your first time on the top deck?
It is.
It's a little bit scary, to be honest, if we're going to be truthful about it.
Yeah, that is definitely true.
It's a long way down to the stage. But you've been all over the place this weekend. You've been sort of on the floor spotting. You've been in the commentary booth. It's been an amazing experience, right?
Yeah, it's been awesome.
So what we're going to do is we are going to talk about Japan. Now, time was round about the mid-2000s. If you wanted a cool deck list, all you had to do was speak Japanese or know someone who would translate for you, because all the best decks, it seemed, came out of Japan. Well, it's much harder to do that now because everyone's dialed in to every great deck on Magic Online day in, day out. By Thursday, we already know what's been winning on Wednesday. But nonetheless, at this tournament, 4 Japanese players brought 4 really cool modern decks to the party. So if you're looking for something just a little bit off the track in modern, why don't we take a look at our 4 Japanese players, what they brought. Let's begin with Ryoichi Tamada and the astonishingly named Thing Ascension. Ian.
Yeah, as you said it, Rich, Japanese Magic players have long been known for their innovation in deck building here, and the innovation that I love to the traditional Pyromancer Ascension list is the addition of Thing in the Ice. It just really gives you a lot more additional early game and gives you breathing room against creatures to set up your combination. Now, Pyromancer Ascension, if you're unfamiliar with the deck, you're trying to get the enchantment Pyromancer's Ascension on the battlefield and then power it up by casting lots and lots of spells. Once you get your Pyromancer's Ascension active, it doubles every spell that you cast, so you can start generating lots of mana with cards like Mana Morphos and eventually just Lightning Bolt or Lightning Helix your opponent into oblivion.
Gabby, is this your kind of deck? Is this something that you would bring along to a modern PPTQ maybe?
It is not, but I think it's a really cool deck. I think the fact that Thing in the Ice, when it was previewed, you know, the older the format, usually the cheaper the spells are and the better a card like that is. So
right.
I definitely see the appeal, and I've definitely talked to a bunch of players who played a Thing in the Ice, and they were like, I thought things were going fine in this game, and then they would like, Gitaxian Pro, Bolt, Thing in the Ice, you're dead.
Yeah,
so,
Owen Turtenwald was saying just how much he loves Gitaxian Pro as a card, just amazing card for sure. All right, so why don't we move on? Let's take a look at Yuya Watanabe's deck list. Now, the 2-time Player of the Year, he brought along Goryo's Vengeance. Gabby, what's going on here?
This deck is awesome. It's trying to do very unfair things, such as get Grizzlebrand or Emrakul Daeon's Torn out in a very quick fashion. So it's trying to use the graveyard to its advantage. Getting cards in there like Faithless Looting and Is a Charm. will let you put cards in your graveyard, and then you'll use something like Goryo's Vengeance to reanimate that later on. You can also use Collective Brutality. That's a cool new inclusion that the deck got from the latest set. And then once you have a Grizzlebrand, you can draw a lot of cards. When you have Emrakul, you just decimate your opponent's board. And a lot of times modern decks will try to play a longer game, and when they do that, they just get turned to Grizzlebrand and they're done.
Yeah, Ian, I think it's fair to say that anytime you see 4 Emrakul the Aeon's Torn and 4 Grizzlebrand, even if we blanked out the rest of the deck, we could label the deck unfair with a big tick mark.
Definitely, you are not casting explosive vegetation and trying to ramp those cards out in a fair way. You're definitely cheating. I mean, not literally cheating, but cheating them onto the battlefield somehow.
All right, let's move on. Let's take a look at Kazuyuki Takamura, our Pro Tour champion from this season. What did he bring along to the party? Well, he was going to be all about the graveyard and dredge. So let's take a look at the dredge deck of Kazuyuki Takamura. So there it is. Ian, what's going on here?
So this deck is super cool. Unlike the last 2 that we showed, this is almost a brand new archetype that's really emerged in the last 6 months with the Shadows over Innistrad block. Now, the classic dredge deck revolves around the mechanic dredge, which allows you to replace your draw step by putting more cards in your graveyard. In this particular case, the deck is using cards like Faithless Looting and Shriekhorn even to put a whole bunch of cards in the graveyard very quickly, as well as dredging Golgari Grave Troll. And then what you do with that is you return Narcomoeba or Bloodghast to the battlefield from your graveyard, and that also returns all of your prized amalgams, which is the key new card from Shadows over Innistrad. So you can assemble a board full of powerful creatures very, very quickly and explosively by turn 2 or turn 3.
All right, now I'm not going to lie, that all sounded, I thought you did it brilliantly, but that sounded very complicated. Gabby, is this what I would call a hand grenade kind of deck, where if you don't know quite what you're doing, you're ending up holding the hand grenade when it goes off?
A little bit. The cool thing about the deck is that it's definitely had a resurgence because of a couple cards that have been printed for it recently. So Prized Amalgam is a great thing that it got, and Insolent Neonate as well. So the bigger problem that a lot of times dredge decks have is they don't get going, right? They need to get cards in the graveyard and they need to get a dredger in there. Once they have a dredger, they start spilling their wheels, they start recurring all their creatures, and then eventually they beat down. So it's cool that all these new cards were printed for it, because a lot of people were trying to make dredge happen in Modern to not great effect, and now these cards are in, and then the deck is now great.
Opens up a whole new area of play, which is one of the reasons we love Modern so much. That's 3 decks, 1 more to go. How about Shota Yasuoka? Well, Company features in this name, so why don't we check? Yep, there's full collected Company. All's right with the world, Gabby.
Yeah, this deck's great. It's very much a resurgence of what used to be
the Birthing Pod,
yeah, the Birthing Pod deck. So this is kind of what happened after Birthing Pod got banned, but people still wanted to play a similar deck to it. So it's still trying to assemble infinite combos, and it does it by using cards like Anafenza Kintree Spirit. Whereas the rest of our cards, we have Murderous Redcap, we have Kitchen Finks, and Miller Silvok Outcast. And if you find a way to get those cards out at the same time and then be able to sacrifice them, if you are able to prevent those persist creatures from getting -1/-1 counters, you can do it infinitely. So the deck can gain infinite life, the deck can deal infinite damage, or make its creatures infinitely big with something like Anafenza Kintree Spirit. And then you have a little bit of a toolboxing going, so you have Port of Calling to find those pieces of the puzzle. Collected Company helps you find the pieces to assemble your combo. And you can actually grind out a really good game even if you don't assemble the combo, because your opponents have to respect the fact that you could.
Ian, in R&D, I know that you work pretty hard to make sure that Standard is not littered with infinite combos, because that eventually stops being fun. But how pleasing is it to you that there are these formats where utter craziness is allowed to thrive?
I think it's super cool. I think there's a perception that R&D doesn't like combo decks. That's just not true at all. We don't like unfair combo decks that win the game super quickly
and can never be beaten
in an uninteractive fashion. I think it is awesome that there are combos in Magic. I grew up as a Magic player. I love to build combo decks. This is a super cool deck in particular because it has a lot of moving pieces. You need a bunch of different creatures in play. They're interacting with each other, and your opponent can disrupt you fairly easily if they have, say, a creature removal spell or a sideboard card like Grafdigger's Cage. So I love watching this deck play, and I think it's one of my favorite decks in Modern.
For sure. Now, from the constructed resources angle of Modern with Japan, thanks to our 4 Japanese players for bringing 4 really cool decks to the party, we're going to head across town for, well, let's say, some limited resources. Marshall and LSV.
I guess I'll probably say that.
Yeah. All right, and welcome to the big screen over here. Marshall Cyclist with Luis Scott-Vargas, and we're going to do mini version of limited resources here, but we've got something kind of cool to look at.
Extremely limited resources.
Extremely limited resources for you, but we've got something kind of fun to look at, something that we don't normally get to do because this is a visual medium, and we get to show you actually the development of a pack as it goes around the table here at the World Championships. So let's take a look at our graphic here. You can see we're going to be sitting in JC Tao's seat, so that's at the top of the graphic there, but we're actually going to start this pack off, I believe, with Owen Turtenwald. We'll find out in just a second there. And yeah, let's take a look there. So there's Owen Turtenwald. Now I can tell you, as we come into this, JC has drafted green and red, Luis.
Right.
And that's the colors that he's in. But he does have one Boon of Emrakul in his pack at this point, excuse me, in his pile at this point. So he's speculated into black a little bit here, okay? Now, this pack, though, as we see it here, is actually with Owen Turtenwald. Now, at the time, Owen decided to take Sigardian Priest. I think we actually maybe watched this one on camera, but and you know, that makes sense. Like when you look at this pack, what jumps off the table to you, considering that it's pack 2?
Considering it's pack 2, I mean, certainly the most powerful cards are Sigardian Priest, Wretched Griff, and Bloodhall Priest. So
sure.
Priests 2, Griffs 1, I guess. But other than that, I mean, you're not very excited. If you have to take something like Wolfkin Bond or Extricator of Sin, then you're not in as great of a shape. So luckily for Owen, he took the Sigardian Priest.
Right, and you know, this is of course going to be very color dependent, depending on what each player is in, but we're going to watch as this pack develops. So let's go to the next person along the line, which is Yuya Watanabe. And Yuya was also in white in this draft and ended up taking the Extricator of Sin, which of course means that some of the more powerful cards are staying in the pack. You talked about the Wretched Griff and the Bloodhall Priest. They're still here.
Yeah, and pack 2 is exactly where you'd expect Bloodhall Priest to float a little bit. It's a multicolored card. It's red-black. If you're not in both those colors, this is not, I mean, it's a somewhat splashable card, but it's not a card you're jumping out of your seat for if you're, say, red-green.
That's right. It really does fit well in the red-black vampires, aggro, discard, madness deck, and other decks would probably play it, but maybe not be as excited. Okay, let's go on to the third pack here as this one starts to float around the table, and we can see it was Andrea Mengucci who did in fact take the Wretched Griff, and this is where things get kind of cool from this perspective, just sticking with one pack as it goes around, because now you start to see the options whittle down. 2 of those top 3 cards that you mentioned have been picked, and the one that isn't is a gold card, which for reasons you just explained, you know, it's not unlikely to be still in the pack.
Yeah, we're now entering the phase of the pack where if you're not able to take Bloodhall Priest, the cards you're looking at are just not that exciting. You have Unsubstantiate, it's a fine card. You have, you know, Ironclad Slayer, it's a fine card, but we also just saw 2 white drafters in a row, so having a third white drafter so close is probably not great for that person.
Exactly, so the Wretched Griff is now gone. Andrea Mengucci kind of scooped up the last of the really good non-gold cards here. Let's take a look at the next pack as we move our way through. Brian Brownduin. He did pretty good. Pack 2, pick 4, and you know, you just mentioned the Unsubstantiate. There it is.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a World Championship winning pick, but it is what he has to take out of his pack. A 4th pick Unsubstantiate is really nothing to write home about, but if you're playing blue, what other options are here for you? Even if you're like blue-green, you're not really going to take Wolfkin Bond here.
Exactly, and now we do see that the Ironclad Slayer and the Skurstag Supplicant is also starting to creep up the list here.
Yeah,
there's a
Geist of the Lonely Vigil too.
Yeah.
I mean,
we're starting to get a little lower in the action here. Let's go to the next one, where we've got Ryoichi Tamada, who was apparently also in white and took that Ironclad Slayer.
Yeah, this pack was deep on white cards, and Ironclad Slayer, I think, again, setting aside Bloodhall Priest, if you're not those 2 colors exactly, probably the best card left in the pack. This is a little dependent on having auras and equipment, but still a very solid card.
That's right. All right, so this is the 6th pick, and here we see on this next one, Andre Strasky. And now Andre's in red, but again, the power of gold cards and how they can be tough to draft if you're not in those colors really shows itself as he takes the Stencia Innkeeper over the Bloodhall Priest here, ostensibly not in black-red.
Yeah, he's half the colors you need to play Bloodhall Priest, but the other half wasn't black, so Stencia Innkeeper, potentially the only even playable card in his deck.
Right, and that brings us to the key pick here, which is pack 2, pick 7, which is JC Tao. Now, this is the interesting thing about this, is that JC gets this 7th pick in the second pack, but he had not fully committed to a second color at the time. He was going to be green. He had red cards. He was going to be green as well, but he already had a Boon of Emrakul, and I wanted you to talk about what it takes for you to switch over to a different color when you kind of thought you were going to be too specific.
Something like 7th pick Bloodhall Priest, that's really high on my list. Basically, if you're JC Town, let's say you're red-green after pack 1, and maybe in the middle of pack 2, you've taken a couple of each card. When you look at a pack like this, and you look at Wolfkin Bond and Distemper of the Blood as your 2 playable options, First of all, you're not giving up almost anything by taking Bloodhall Priest, right? These cards are just not even a factor. So
Right.
you're getting a Bloodhall Priest kind of for free. Second of all, Bloodhall Priest, I mean, it's like a 9 out of 10 if you're red-black. You know no one else is red-black if no one else took that card. So jumping into black right there, especially since he did have that one boon of Emrakul, all of a sudden it kind of looks like a good plan, especially if he was biased towards red to begin with.
Right, and this is pack 2, so going into Shadows over Innistrad, you might get a chance to get your hands on some of the good black and red cards from that set as well, especially, you know, moving into that other color there.
And you know, black-red specifically is the kind of archetype where cards that are mono-black or mono-red fit better into black-red, so yeah, you might see late madness cards that other players wouldn't take even if they're in those colors.
All right, so good stuff. Thanks, Luis. And thank you for joining us as we walked through that Bloodhall Priest, kind of skipping around the table and eventually finding a home with JC Tell. Let's send it back to Rich Hagen on the top deck.
Thanks very much, Marshall, and to Luis Scott-Vargas. A little limited segment for you there. We're going to go back to Constructed in the company of Matej Big C Zadelkai, one of our favorite players from Europe, Joel Larson. Joel, congratulations, of course, champion of Pro Tour Magic Origins a year ago, and here at your second Worlds, 7-7 again. It's a super tough tournament, right?
It's true.
It really is. But the reason we brought Joel here is we want to talk about a particular deck. Now, the storyline, this is the deck that was played by Lucas Blahon, Jund Delirium. It's a deck that Joel has played a version of, recently played at the Pro Tour. And the thing is, Matej, what we found was that BBD played to get this deck out of the top 4. We'd seen it already beat Shota Yasuoka, who played in the top 4. So Jund Delirium has obviously got a lot going for it. Just a real storyline developing there. So why don't we take a look at the list and see what's going on. And Matej, if you want to take over the reins and have a chat with Joel about Jund Delirium.
Well, I'm not surprised Brian wanted it out of the top 4 because it's just so well set up against his own deck with Languishes, Kozilek's Return, but the deck just does so much more. So I'd like to ask you, what is the main game plan of the deck? How does it usually play out?
So the way we came up with the deck is, at first we just wanted a way to hedge against the other Emrakul decks or the other decks for the Pro Tour. So we want to build this Mindbender deck. And when we continued building it, it just became kind of an anti-Coco deck. It just crushed Coco in our testing. So that's why we decided to run it. So this deck is just very good against Collected Company. And it's a little bit worse off against the Turbo Emrakul decks, but it definitely has play.
All right, so I figure the way you get really ahead in this against the Collected Company, like I said, is probably the interaction with playing a cheaper distant Mindbender while also triggering Kozilek's Return, wiping their board and their hand.
No, definitely. So the problem for the Coco decks is that whenever you play a 3-drop, either Pilgrim's Eye or Nissa, they have to respect the possibility of a distant Mindbender coming into play. And if they say Dromoka's Command that or Reflective Mage that, they can't cast Collected Company that turn. And if they don't do that, we can just languish them. But if they don't care about it, we can cast Mindbender, triggering Kozilek's Return, and they can't even respond with Company, because we're gonna sweep everything if they respond, and if they don't respond, we just take it out of their hand.
All right, so we saw the banned humans list win Worlds. Brian Brown has the trophy in his hands.
Yeah, that's
so
what we chose to play.
Would you recommend people to pick up Jund Delirium? And if so, why is it so good against this particular deck?
All right, so it's even better against banned humans because they have to pressure us way more. They have to commit more to the board than a regular banned Coco deck does, because banned Coco has way more of a flash game. So I think we're even more favorite there. So I think that's a good thing. If you want to beat banned Company, Jund Delirium is where you want to go for sure.
It sounds like Jund Delirium is a terrific place to be. So if you're exploring Standard in the wake of new Standard here as we wail down towards Kaladesh coming this fall, of course, end of September is your pre-release, 24-25 of September. Why not check out Jund Delirium? Thanks very much to Joel Larson, Pro Tour champion and competitor here at Worlds. But of course, there can only be one world champion. That was Brian Brown doing. It was an amazing day here at the Paramount Theatre live. We watched him basically monster his way past Shota Yasuoka, and then in the final, which was one for the ages, especially Game 3, in a 4-game set, he bested Marcio Carvalho of Portugal. And as the handshake came, what an amazing sight to see BBD. There he is, winning the World Championship. What a moment. And you can see he can barely believe it. I wonder if he can believe it now. He's up in the gods as he is amongst the gods. Here at the Paramount, here's BBD with BDM.
Thanks, Rich. I'm here with freshly crowned champion of the Magic world in the Brian Brown Doin Theater, because you've simply owned this venue all weekend long. Brian, how does it feel to be the Magic the Gathering world champion?
Pretty great, yeah. If you asked me a week ago if I thought I'd be here, the answer is no. So, well beyond expectations, and just, it's unbelievable.
The term underdog was thrown around a little bit early on, and a term you were perfectly willing to embrace.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of nice to be the underdog. If you do really poorly, that's what you're supposed to do. But if you do really well, it's a great success story. So I never have any problem being the underdog.
Now, one other thing that you are this weekend now is platinum. And this is something you came so close to at Pro Tour Eldritch Moon. And I know it was pretty crushing for you to not get there. I mean, hard to complain about your season, but this is what you play for all year long, right?
Yeah, it's pretty insane that I missed platinum and then still somehow got it. I can't really... I don't know what to say about that. That's just kind of awesome. And I thought, for a while I was going to get it at the last Pro Tour, like you said. And then I had a really poor showing day 2. And that was kind of disappointing, even though I had already qualified for Worlds and I was happy about that. So to be able to get the platinum as well, that's just icing on the cake.
Now talk a little bit about how you prepared for this event. Like, how much work went into getting you here in the balcony of the Brian Brown Theater?
Well, I basically tested for a week and a half straight leading into this event. Brad Nelson and I went to the SCG Invitational a couple weekends ago, played there, and then we flew immediately from there to Seattle, and we've been testing almost nonstop since until the tournament started. So a week and a half of just nonstop testing, and it really paid off.
Now, I think everyone watching at home was amazed by that 1 and 7 minute long Game 3 of the finals. The game was crazy. Players in the Players Lounge were just yelling back and forth about who was winning at any given moment. At what point in that game did you think you would win and go to Game 4?
I basically felt like I was winning the entire point after I had killed his Avacyn. With there was a double Dramoka's command with his one Dramoka's command, crazy stack. And once I was able to come out ahead of that, I thought for sure I was going to win the game. I was just going to play a pretty conservative, grindy game for the rest of the game until I found Tragic Arrogance, and then get a ton of card advantage off of Tragic Arrogance and then go for the kill afterwards. It ended up getting really close because I just couldn't find a Tragic Arrogance for a really long time. Every time I activated a Duskwatch or cast a Coco, there's a Tragic Arrogance in there. But eventually I found it, and it was a huge blowout, and I was able to win.
Now, in Game 4, what would you say the key moment where you thought, yes, I'm going to win this, I'm going to become the world champion? You were down to 7 life. It must have felt a little precarious.
Yeah, I was really nervous Game 4 because he got me down so low so early. If I had been at a higher life total, I could have played really aggressively, and I had a much bigger board than he did, and I would have been able to win pretty easily, I think, had I not been at 7, if I was at 15 instead. But because of Elder Deep Fiend, I had to play super conservatively to not risk losing. And I felt like could really go either way for most of that game. I had a Tragic in my hand, but there was never really an opportunity to play it. And I had to keep just playing creatures out into my later Tragic Arrogance. But once he started cracking clues that last turn, and I could see from his facial expression that he was not finding what he needed, that's when I started to think that I'm probably going to win this game for sure. And my heart started pounding, and it was wild.
Now, we've been following your career for a long time. We followed you when you were coming up on the SCG Opens, when you first started qualifying for the Pro Tours, doing well at Grand Prix, competing on the Pro Tour regularly. And it has to be such an inspiration to players at home who find themselves entering that same pattern of play. They're going to, their local Open Series. They're going to their GPs. They're competing at the RPTQs. What advice do you have for someone, not too far off from that play pattern yourself? What advice do you have for someone, some of the young Magic players watching at home that they might want to get here, and be interviewed as the Magic the Gathering World Champion one day?
Basically, you have to put a lot of work into it. It's not easy. You can't just will yourself to win. You have to like put in the effort. You have to constantly be improving. I think that's the big thing. Like, you just have to always be trying to better yourself. Always look for where your flaws are as a Magic player, and then just keep working at it. And sometimes it takes a really long time. Like, for me, I've been grinding for, I don't know, many years, and my success has kind of come incrementally.
So be patient.
Yeah, you have to be very patient. You have to be willing to suffer through a lot of losing and hardship. And I went 8 months one time without top 8ing a single event, like any event, like not even F&M, like in 2014. So really, you just have to battle through the good and the bad.
All right, what's next for you? You're going to Pro Tour Kaladesh. Who will you be testing with? What can we expect to see from you there real quickly?
Testing with team face-to-face games again, and as for what to expect, hopefully a better limited performance. That's all I have to say.
Is that something you feel like you still need to improve in your game?
Absolutely. I went 3-3 here in limited, and even though I'm playing against the best of the best, it's still something that I wanted to improve. My goal coming in was 4-2, so I want to put a lot of effort into becoming better at limited and making sure that I can, consistently go 4-2 or 5-1 at Pro Tours and limited. That's how you make top 8s.
Gives yourself a little bit more room for your constructed deck too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Brian Brown, you are the Magic the Gathering World Champion. I am sure your friends are eagerly awaiting to let you buy them dinner. You've now increased your lifetime winnings from just short of $30,000 to just short of $100,000. $70,000 first prize. He's platinum. You're going to see him at Pro Tour Kaladesh. Sending it back to Rich at the news desk.
This just in, the world champion wants to get better. That's one of the reasons that he's the Magic the Gathering World Champion. 4 days ago, 24 of the finest players from around the world came here to the Paramount Theater in downtown Seattle to battle for that share of $250,000 in prize money and that slice of Magic immortality, not to mention a healthy dose of pro points as well. They battled across 6 rounds of draft. They played 4 rounds of standard. They shifted to modern before we cut to our final 4. Today, BBD bested Shota Yasuoka in a blistering 3-game set. On the other side of the bracket, it was the draft master from Portugal, Marcio Carvalho, who finally put an end to the fantastic run of Rookie of the Year and constructed master, Oliver Tu. He's only 18. What a future is ahead for Oliver Tu. But in the end, Tu, Dunn, Marcio Carvalho, Brian Brown face off in the final. At 1-1, we sat down for what turned out to be one of the greatest games ever seen on camera. BBD won that to go to 2-1, and then, still with permanence littering the board, he claimed the title by 3-1. Magic, of course, is the game that never sleeps. Tomorrow at 1 p.m. Pacific, we'll be right here again from the Paramount live to bring you all the action from the final day of PAX. We've got a deck building panel. We've got the Spell Slingers showdown for you. That's going to be amazing. Blogger Live with Mark Rosewater. And a closing show that fans of Magic will not want to miss. All of that comes tomorrow. But this is the curtain falling on our World Championship coverage for 2016. And we leave you with the news that Brian Brown is on top of the world.